I speak once more to the people of Russia. The United States and the nations of Europe do not seek to control or destroy Russia. The West was not plotting to attack Russia, as Putin said today. This war was never a necessity. It's a tragedy.
Russian people most likely didn't hear President Biden in Poland today. Russian state TV didn't carry his speech, and obviously free press in Russia is censored. But by almost every reasonable measure, the past 2 days were either the best or among the best of the Biden presidency. We have a president who clearly embraces his role as a wartime president. And in a way, Mr. Biden gets the best of both worlds. He gets to be a wartime president and visit Kyiv, talk tough about paying any price and supporting Ukraine indefinitely, without worrying about the lives of American men and women in uniform actually paying that price. And of course, our military brass is busy these days with other things. You couldn't make this up as it comes to the timing. Just as Mr. Biden went abroad to talk about America supporting democracy and supporting Ukraine, the Department of Defense tweets, "Diversity is a strategic imperative critical to mission readiness and accomplishment. We were on site for the 2023 inaugural DoD, Department of Defense, ODEI Summit as DEIA, inclusive diversity experts, led forums to advance the DEIA and DoD mission because our people matter." Let's be clear. Neither Russia nor China care how diverse or inclusive our military is. It does not scare them. Meantime, our military can't meet recruiting goals despite lowering standards. The Army came up 25% short of its goal again this past year. This is not the fault of the good men and women, the brave men and women who stand guard around the world every day and night. It's a failing of leadership, and leadership on both sides, because hollowing out our military is a bipartisan issue on Capitol Hill right now. Most of our new weapon systems have serious delays and or problems, and our ability to project force continues to weaken, something the Russian and Chinese love. We know President Biden idolizes FDR, another wartime president. FDR's older cousin, Teddy Roosevelt, famously said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." Aaron Matei is here, journalist at The Gray Zone, longtime advocate of appeasing or at least placating or at least listening to Vladimir Putin's point of view on these issues. Is President Biden writing checks that America's military right now may not be able to cash, or is cashing at the expense of America's security?
I see it differently. I think the Biden administration is diverting tens of billions of dollars into a dangerous proxy war that is fueling nuclear dangers. Just today, Putin announced that Russia is limiting compliance with New START, the last remaining treaty that limits the nuclear arsenals of both the U.S. and Russia. And Biden is spending all this money rather than addressing issues at home, where we have a homelessness crisis. Look at the disaster now in East Palestine, Ohio. So I think Biden already is spending too much money on the military, and this should be going into domestic problems rather than fueling a proxy war. The Biden administration should be embracing diplomacy.
Diplomacy is always a good thing. I would point out that Vladimir Putin chose the war over diplomacy, as he did in 2014 when I was there. But either way, you bring up nuclear war. And Vladimir Putin, every time it's a bad day for him, every time the PR machine is moving against him, there was an enormous groundswell of support for President Biden yesterday. He goes abroad. He goes to Kyiv. Newspapers around the world heralded him as the leader of the free world. Vladimir Putin goes back to this, "Oh, I'm going to bang the nuclear drum a little bit." Come on, we're not going to have nuclear war, really?
Well, I think that speaks to the point you raised about Vladimir Putin choosing war in 2014 and 2022. So let me address it. In 2014, Vladimir Putin didn't choose for the U.S. to come in and back a coup of the government in Ukraine. Whether you liked them or not, they were very corrupt, but they were elected and they were overthrown. And there's a recording of Victoria Nuland, now a senior official under Biden, back then she was under Obama, plotting who would be the next leader of Ukraine. So the U.S. backed that coup, and that set off a war inside of Ukraine with the U.S. and Russia on opposing sides. And in 2022, it's true that Putin chose war. He chose to invade. I don't support that. But it's also true that shortly before Russia invaded, it did lay out these extensive proposals in December 2021, presenting draft treaties to the U.S. and NATO to try to address Russian concerns about NATO expansion, including possibly to Ukraine, and also about all the weapon systems that are deployed around Russia's borders. And it was the U.S. that refused to even negotiate on those issues.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.